time to shift gears. This is the Man Shift Guide.
Welcome back to our podcast. Today we have a really exciting episode that I'm looking forward to, and this is our friend Frank, and he is a former U.S. Navy, so he is a U.S. Navy veteran and also former law enforcement, and he's kind of changed that story around, and now he's out there in the world with his own company, or I don't know how you would put it, but he helps train other people who are looking forward to doing law enforcement and things of that nature. And I think that it's a super interesting topic, not only for people who are trying to prepare to be becoming law enforcement, but also translating it to just being prepared in life. Really, like how many of us go out there and we feel like we're wanting to do something, but we just don't have the right tools. Like we have the willingness and we have the energy and we have all of the things, but we just don't quite have that step forward to get there. And that's what I would like to talk about today. And Frank, if you want to go ahead and start to explain the things that you're doing, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you again. A little bit about my background, as you said, U.S. Navy for approximately 6 years, enlisted right when I turned 18, rotated out to boot camp in Great Lakes at 19. 6 years, three deployments to the Middle East, two full-time deployments, and one small tactics deployment. Knew I wanted to transition out, wanted to get into law enforcement. I'm an avid outdoors individual. I've kind of given this spiel a bunch, but I'm an avid outdoor individual. And I thought, why not combine the two? Why not go become a conservation law enforcement officer with the federally with the National Park Service? Multiple reasons. One is I got to carry over all my military time into my retirement, so that was nice. And then I became the backcountry law enforcement ranger for the Smoky Mountain National Park.
Hmm.
After that, I lateraled up to Washington, D.C., worked with another agency up there for some time. My career kind of took off. I was really blessed. I've said this before that, I can't take any credit for it. A lot of good mentors that have guided me along the way so that I could succeed. And then from there, I knew I wanted to kind of slow down a little bit, get off the street. Some of my military injuries started catching up with me and made it harder to perform operations. So I rotated or moved back down where I consider home in North Carolina, and I winded up starting my own consulting firm, Armogan Consulting and Training, where we assist law enforcement candidates not only through the hiring process, but getting their career set up. And then as we've been growing, we've been expanding, reaching out, creating new programs. I can't dive too much into where we are with those just yet, but yeah, it's been an exciting ride. I'm happy about it. It's opened up the opportunity for me to be more involved with my family, and then also it's opened the doors for me to have a lot of connections with like-minded individuals running businesses that we help guide each other all the time. So, as I said, I appreciate you letting me come on here and talk a little bit about our story, and thanks.
Yeah. So you said some kind of interesting things there. You did mention that you've had some kind of injuries in the past that might have like kind of persuaded you to get into the route in which that you're in now. But was there anything else that really wanted you to start to take on this mentoringship position?
When I was in both the military and, law enforcement as a sworn officer, I was really an ops guy. I loved doing operations. I was always wanting to be on scene, wanted to get out there, had that drive. But as I grew, and once again, as mentors that have led me, I started picking up instructorships, and I found I had a real passion for training. I mean, something that I didn't even think would ever happen. It was just something that really was fortuitous for me, and like I said, a lot of good guidance from individuals. I'll never not say that enough. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. But yeah, once I started getting into the instructor realm and realizing the impact you could have on individuals from just that aspect, from a mentor, from an instructor, or even a coach aspect, I fell in love with it. And then as my injuries started slowing me down, it was just the perfect transition for me.
So. let's lead into like the actual mentorship that you do. So there was a lot of talk about like this readiness gap. What does that mean? And where do you see that needing to like show up the most?
So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'll kind of throw you on the spot here.
Sure.
What do you think you could tell me about all this? How many steps do you think there are to becoming a police officer typically?
To be quite honest with you, I that's not something that I've really thought about before. I know that there's from people that I've talked to who have tried to do this in the past. Um, I know there's a fitness part of it, and
Hmm.
then there's like a test part of it where you have to like show that you can do like your basic like can you
Hmm.
spell things of that nature. And then obviously there's kind of like a knowledge of like what you're like of the Constitution and like kind of like the laws, and then knowing like the code words and all those kinds of stuff. But other than beyond that, I don't really know what else there would be.
And that's a perfect example of what I mean. So imagine you wanted to transition to law enforcement. And that's where you're starting. You have no real knowledge. Maybe you know a couple people that are law enforcement, but do they have time to sit down and talk with you? Maybe, and not every experience is the same. Not every department is the same. So typically, there's 11 phases to becoming a law enforcement officer.
Wow.
11. So there's your written exam, your physical exam, your board interview, your your chief's interview if they have one or an executive interview. Then you have your background PHS, right, which is your full background packet, everything about your life, and you have to have all that put together and submitted. Then you have a background interview to discuss all that to make sure it's accurate and they want to move forward. Then you have a polygraph to make sure all of it, you're telling
Huh.
the truth on all of it. Then you have, and during your polygraph, you have a polygraph pre-screening form, which is just a more condensed legal version of your background form. And then you have a pre-screening interview. Then you have the polygraph. Then you have a post-screening interview where they're allowed to lie to you and tell you they saw flags and see if you
Huh.
change your answer. Then you have after that, then you have your medical review. And in that, let's just say we'll just combine these two. You'll say you'll have your medical review, which is are you physically fit and you don't have anything that would stop you from becoming a police officer, plus your urine analysis and your drug screening. Then you have your psychological review at the end to make sure, hey, are you going to be, able to mentally handle the rigors of the profession? And that one, there's some contention there because usually they're third party evaluators. They don't care if you get hired or not. And, sometimes we see some biases there, right? And then after that, you might even still have a civilian panel review, depending on how big your city is. And so you went through all this stuff with the law enforcement. Then is your city council going to approve you? And most of the time, a lot of them don't have any law enforcement experience. It's just whether or not they think you're a good fit for the city.
Wow, that's really really rigorous. Like that's so much things that I like you would never even think about doing. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot, and it stresses out candidates just thinking about it, let alone the concept of thinking, I'm going to have to spill everything about my life, every hurdle I've ever had, anything I've ever done wrong. And if I misarticulate it or if I misexplain it, they're just going to disqualify me. So there's the fear of even telling people you're pursuing law enforcement because the chances of making it are, I don't want to say slim, but they're statistically not in your favor, especially if you just kind of go at it and wing it. That actually, they're in your favor right now, but if you go in and wing it, it's definitely not in your favor if you don't prepare for it. And then the other aspect of it is law enforcement is a politically sensitive subject, especially even
sure.
right now.
Yeah.
And so most people are tell me all the time, I'm afraid to even talk to my family and that I want to pursue law enforcement. So then you're doing it completely alone and by yourself with no support.
As you were talking, I was thinking about like the politically charged part of it. And do you think that because we've only see what we see, right? We only see like, like the little blips in the news and then our own experience with police officers and then of course the media. Like, do you think that if more people like knew how much it took to become a police officer, that maybe they would have a little bit more like of a respect for it? Like I had no idea like all of those things were like included in becoming that. And it's like, man, that's like a lot harder than I really actually realized.
Yeah, maybe. I just recently did a interview on Fox not too long ago, And even while I was explaining certain police procedures and things like that, I found myself having to be sensitive to how I would explain things just so that it wouldn't be misinterpreted. And it was my first time doing a really big platform. I've
Yeah.
done lives before. I've spoken on quite a few podcasts, but it's the first time doing a really big live. And to be honest, I was nervous about it. And being able to share that, I mean, just imagine how those candidates feel when it comes to that aspect of hey, I'm going to have to share my entire life. And by the way, if I ever go to court, everything can be brought up and subpoenaed in court from my hiring information. So if
Right.
I've ever done anything wrong, the whole world could find out about it. And so there's all that to go into it and the politically charged aspect. But then you get into the other aspect, and I'll kind of give you some experiences I have. I see people all the time say, law enforcement need to have a 4-year degree. Absolutely, a 4-year degree. It's mandatory, and that comes from these last decade's push or 2 decades push of education being the only way to have a successful career. But then when you think about it, the average police academy is 720 hours, or we'll just say 700 hours,
Mhm.
right? Roughly 700 hours, give or take, depending on how long the academy is. But roughly 700 hours is your bachelor's degree is 120 hours. And then people will say, "Oh, well, yeah, but you got to study for 3 to 4 hours for each credit hour." Okay, so 120 hours times four, right? We'll give it the max, or let's even give it even more. Let's say 5 hours of studying for each credit hour. Well, that's 600 hours, and then the police academy is typically 700 hours. And then if you think you're not studying after you just pulled a 10-hour day in the police academy, which by the way, the entire time you're in the academy, you're being evaluated. It's not like I study, I go in and I take a test for a bachelor's degree or a degree. No, as soon as I step foot out of my vehicle or even driving into my vehicle into the academy, if it's not a live-in academy, they're inspecting my vehicle. Is my vehicle registration out of date? I'm gonna get dinged or possibly kicked out of the academy for that. Did I get it? Did I get a speeding ticket during the academy? I'm gonna get kicked out and lose my job before I even become a full-fledged police officer.
Mm.
Right. And so a lot of times I think it's exactly what you just said, where is if people had more knowledge of it, but that's anything in life, I should say. If people had more knowledge of everything, maybe we wouldn't have such divisive takes on it. But no matter what, law enforcement has always been politically charged. And I, while that I'd like to fix that, I think I've focused more on a realm where that's going to be out there. I just want to try and improve the officers as best as I can. And maybe subsequently down the line, that will no longer be a factor. I hear a lot of times individuals say, I want to build a bridge between law enforcement and community. I don't want a bridge. I want to stand in on the same piece of land.
Mhm.
And that's kind of our goal.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to another question is that before you decided to be into this mentorship, did you see that there's kind of like a gap or there was like a lack of this kind of spot? So you kind of like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to help other people. Or does that make sense to you? Like,
No,
what I'm asking?
I
Yeah.
do. I'll kind of answer this in two parts. Yes, for the first part, yes, you see a gap when I went through law enforcement, I had no one helping me. When I walked into my first police academy, I said I want to be the backcountry law enforcement ranger, and I self-sponsored, which means I paid to go through the academy. There was no way I was going to have a job. I had to have money saved up and go through the academy and then hope I get hired out of the academy, right? So
Sure.
that I could have a job and pay my bills. Uh, so when I walked into the academy, they said, introduce yourself. I said, hey, I'm Frank. I want to be the backcountry law enforcement officer in the Smoky Mountain National Park. Everyone laughed at me.
Huh.
Every single one. So a lot of them actually had already worked with the National Park Service in a seasonal aspect or in an interpretive aspect as an interpretive ranger, so non-law enforcement ranger. So they had experience. They knew how hard it was to get into the National Park Service as a job. It's rigorous, so rigorous that only 6 of us out of the academy got job offers our first year
Hmm.
out of the academy. So it was apparent to me at that point in time. I didn't know what I was going into, and as I applied to more departments and moved around a little bit, I saw the rigors. The other part to it was I had people ask me as I got into law enforcement and as I was a law enforcement officer, how do you get into law enforcement? So then when I started my consulting firm, I was doing a little bit of general safety consulting where I was taking all my knowledge from the military and my experience in law enforcement and, and training and providing those trainings that I was an instructor in, as well as providing safety consultations for various, businesses and organizations, but it just wasn't there. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, and I wasn't making the impact I wanted. And then a mentor of mine said, when I was talking to him, said, "Hey, why don't you put out all your knowledge and see where it goes? What's the question you get asked the most?" And I said, "It's probably how to become a law enforcement officer." And they said, "Hey, why don't you make some content on that?" And I
Mm,
did, and I literally titled it that, How to Become a Law Enforcement Officer or How to Become a Police Officer. And we put that out on social media and it started getting some traction. And then it led to people reaching out to me. And then the company just kind of niched down and transitioned into that.
that's awesome. Now, I'm kind of trying to figure out how to put this into like more of like, not saying that this is not like a real world scenario, but I can say that there's probably going to be some people out there listening to this that isn't like necessarily wanting to become in law enforcement. So I'm trying to think of how can we spin this for them. And for me, it just this one word that keeps coming up to my mind is like that mentorship aspect. And sometimes you have to admit that sometimes you might need some help. Like you might need some help. Like you said yourself that you had many mentors in your life and that has motivated you to be one yourself. And like what at what point did you get to like I don't know what I'm doing, maybe I need to look elsewhere, or did you just always had those people to like kind of help direct you?
I love this. So, yes, I always had those people, but I didn't recognize it.
Hmm,
I didn't know it was there. I didn't know at that point in time. Yes, I was getting advice, but I didn't recognize it as a mentorship. Uh, there's a mentor that I had that well, I got injured in the military early on, and I thought I was getting kicked out. And I had a mentor, and I cannot remember his name. He was a senior
hmm,
chief of mine, and it breaks my heart. I can't remember his name, but he's the only reason I had a successful military career. Right, he managed to get me a job in aviation as a helicopter crew chief. Well, ultimately transitioned into that, but I would not have I would not have been there if it hadn't been for him. And I cannot remember his name to save my
hmm,
life. But he was a mentor of mine, hands down, not even a question. So the mentorship is, I think it's always there. I think if you're looking for it, you can even have someone give you bad advice and still take it as mentorship as long as you recognize it's what not to do and how not to behave.
sure,
Right. So if you look at it and you spin it in a way that, hey, everything's a learning opportunity. And I mean, I don't know if I would describe or identify someone as a mentor that is, giving you bad advice, but it's still mentorship if you can recognize they still help guide you and you recognized it and it will still help shape you. So for me, I think hands down the mentorship is always going to be what is the most prevalent in any any success, whether that's you're going out and you're paying for consultations and coaching, right, and trying to invest in yourself,
hmm,
or that's just someone that that's trying to, that truly wants to see you succeed. And that's really where someone can completely change their life around is if I make this joke all the time. Man, all the successes in my life that I've had are due to good mentors and me
hmm,
listening to them 50% of the time. Imagine what would have happened if I listened to them 100% of the time. So I make that joke all the time to say, yeah, I've had some wins and some successes in certain aspects, but at the other point in time, you can still always do better. You can still always learn. Some other guidance I got was the one thing that can never really be taken away from you is your knowledge, is your experience,
hmm,
right? So the more you go out and the more you get that knowledge, the more you get that experience, the better off that you can be because you can always apply it in a way that you didn't think. Going back to your previous question where you said, hey, you know, Did I think that, it would always work out? And I had no idea what I was doing. Sometimes I still have no idea what I was doing. As I referred to, I did that recent interview with Fox, and I'll be the first person to admit it publicly. I was nervous doing it, and I relied on the same training I give my candidates and my coaching members. I calmed myself down with some breathing techniques. I went in there. I used the same articulation training that we teach them to use as law enforcement officers, and I got through it. And I faced those nerves, and even dare say fear to go on and do it. Do I think that there's more to learn if I do more of those? Absolutely. I should be wanting to grow every single step of the way. One kind of going to another mentor statement that I heard in life and that's really guided me is, when you're born, you got two buckets in your life. You got a bucket of luck and a bucket of knowledge or wisdom. Your
Hmm.
job in life is to fill up your bucket of knowledge before your bucket of luck runs out.
I
And I've
love
always
that.
liked that saying, so that's just been my goal.
Oh, that's awesome. I've never heard that before. That's really cool. Um,
I can't even take credit for it. A mentor told it to me.
yeah, like we can see as you're speaking about how much those other people have like influenced you and that have really built you up to be who you are. And it shows it shows that are you are you because of who helped you. And
Absolutely.
it's not to say that you didn't do the work, but every this is the tradition and the experience of everyone that's around you that helped build you up, and you still had to put the effort into doing that, but you found the people to help you, which is awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, and I'm just super grateful for it. And of, unfortunately, it took years of maturing to recognize it too. So I wish I recognized it earlier so I could go back and tell some of them thank you. But
Yeah,
I think it takes maturity sometimes and to start recognizing it.
yeah, that's kind of one of those unfortunate things is that sometimes we don't see something when it's right in front of us, but like eventually we'll get there. So um it brings me to like another thing of like we tend to kind of um take ourselves like how we're different than everyone else or that how we're trying to do things, and in reality like we're not all that different. Like there's so many people that have been in the same spot that you've been before and have done the things that you're trying to do, so there's just like this the knowledge is out there. It's just being able to have the ability to find the right person or find the right space to be able to do that. So it's awesome that you were able to create this this thing so people can go out and find you and to be able to help them with their law enforcement careers. So
And to kind of piggyback on that, if you don't mind, one of the things that has really God is sometimes you need someone to tell you no,
mm,
right? I have no background in business, right? Everything I've learned, I've had to learn from going out, getting my own coaches, paying for, people's knowledge and experience to get access to it. We host a business owners meeting once a month, and those gentlemen and guys in that they guide me too, and they mentor me in a way, and we're all going through business together and trying to build each other up. But sometimes as a business owner, you get what's called shiny object syndrome, and you want to go every different which way because you think that, hey, this is a great avenue and this is a great avenue. And a lot of times those guys in our business meeting will just tell me, hey, you just need to stop and focus over here. Just let it go. Here you
mhm.
go. Drop everything else. Focus on A, B, C, and D. And that's even that in itself is guidance, and that is just a bunch of guys getting together trying to better one another and help each other succeed.
Yeah. And that brings me back to so many different things. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Atomic Habits with James Clear, that he had something about that. And then um, with the YouTube space, you talk about Mr. Beast saying that he had his group of people that they would just talk about YouTube and learn how to be better at YouTube. And
Hmm.
then there was a business book that talked about how you should, when you want to prioritize everything that you want to do, and that you should only pick like the top three things and then just put everything else away, because like you want to do a lot of stuff but you can't do everything, so you have to
Yep.
just kind of figure out some of the stuff. And that is a great piece of advice, I think, for anybody to listen to. And to wrap things up here, I know we've been talking about mentorship, and I know you say you have a lot of mentors in your life, but this is the the point in the podcast where I ask about men who you admire. And if there's like one or two pieces of things or guys that you admire that you want to shout out for, this would be the time to do that.
I I'm not going to sit here and say there's direct individuals because there's so many that I've taken pieces. Each one of them has helped shape me, going all the way back from when I was a child and my father all the way up to the military, all the way up to law enforcement. Each one of them has I can think of individual specific memories and stories that have been turning points in my life and have steered me down the right road. So what I would just say specifically with that is when, as a man and someone who, usually I'm taking some type of guidance from other male mentors, I tend to I tend to just want to be open at this point in time. I even if it's constructive criticism, send it. Just at
Mm,
this point in time, just send it. Because my job is to filter out what's useful at that point.
mm.
So that would probably be about it.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think that to take away, I think that one of the key things here is, not only to like obviously we want to promote your consultant agency. So if anyone is interested in doing that, how are the best ways to find you?
Yeah, so we're on pretty much all major socials. Our YouTube is where we put out all our content. We have a podcast as well, but we have a website, armoganct.com. So it's ARMOGANCT.com. And on there, you can jump on there. You can jump on free coaching calls with our instructors. You can send us contact forms. You can send comments to any of our socials. We respond to all of them. Sometimes it takes us a while when they start backing up,
Sure.
but yeah, we try to make we put out tons of free content every single week to try and make it so that individuals, they even if you don't want direct coaching, you can still have some guidance going through and pursuing your career.
It's awesome. And the to follow up, you hear the saying like you are what you eat, but you kind of are who you listen to as well. Like we talked about listening to good mentors, and then there's some bad ones out there too. And the advice you take kind of leads you into the direction you want to go in. So,
Absolutely. I'm a huge believer in social theory. You are who you surround yourself with.
yeah. So, I appreciate you for being on here and for contacting us here at the Man Shift Guide. And we will be sure to put any of the links and any of the things that you send us. We will for sure promote those out as well. And I'm really curious to see where you go and how this consulting agency goes. So I hope that someday in the future we'll have you back on and we can have some updates on where you are and things of that nature.
I appreciate it. And thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, most definitely. This has been the Man Shift Guide, and we upload almost weekly. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on because of the holiday break, but we're back into 2006 and we're in full swing, and I have some really exciting guests that are going to come on, Frank being one of them. And I'm excited for 2026 and what the world has to offer. So until next time, I hope that you have a good week and a happy life. Keep on trucking.